Hi there. My name is Clark Buckner. I am a podcast production agency owner here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm recording here in the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. In my business, Relationary Marketing, we create podcasts. And what's really neat about this business is I have all this great equipment. And when I have a friend who is doing a really cool project, like a new book, I can say, hey, let's sit down and talk about it. And here I am with Chris Schultz. He's a founder, a mentor, an investor. He's had success on paper with the traditional success of making a lot of money. Every investor wants to choose the right pick and it go to the moon. But also he's had success in the ways that really matter with life, integrating his experiences. He's just turned 51 and he's at that point in life, like now is the time to where am I at? How can I use tools like analog tools to find this path forward? I'm just really excited. I met Chris and his wife Ann several years ago, and to get the chance to see, hey, what's going on? Tell me about the book is a real opportunity that I wanted to jump at. And so here I am. Welcome, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so great to be back with you, Clark.
Welcome back to Nashville. It's really fun because just down the road is Broadway, and there's a lot of bachelorettes running around, which is the beginning, one of your first companies that you had. I want to just start by asking one thing, like when was the last time you were here?
I have been to Nashville a couple times, but now in the new world in music, now that Ann and I run a music festival. So we come back to Nashville to see music and scout some artists. I was out last night at Paul McDonald's event. He played at Cosmico this year. So it's good to be back in town.
Live music. That has been a steady theme. There's been a lot of changes in your life, but the live music, that energy, has always been
Live
in your
music
heart.
is a love. Live music is absolutely a love. It's a gift to get to work and do that for a living.
I want to begin by just looking at the book and reflecting on the themes that brought you here. There's the loudest theme to me. This is me just being a young man and looking at the relationship with a son and a father, like that is a big part of this. But it's also looking at a life of being a tech entrepreneur that finds a path not using tech to find this inner peace.
Yeah, the title Analog is a reference to living up to my father's legacy. And if you think about it in a tech way of sine waves with an analog record, the better it sounds, how it's replicating the live signal, like our podcast right now, or like a live musician, the higher fidelity it is. At the beginning of my journey, I really was thinking about living up to my father's legacy. And the story of Analog is really about reconciling that with who I am and the life I've lived and where I picked up when my father left off.
Hey, what was there a moment that said, I need to put all of this into a book? Was it around that time? More recent? What comes to mind?
The point at which I decided to write the book, I should say, is where we just were with the COVID, and we went through a 6-month period of laying people off, shutting down locations, and man, I was just burned out. And one day I said to Ann, man, I would like nothing more than just to take a break, take a sabbatical, write a book. And it just occurred to me. And I realized where the motivation was coming from. One of the things that was lacking for me was interaction. I was no longer seeing anyone, and I spent many years working very closely with entrepreneurs, and I loved that, fueled me. And that had come to an abrupt halt, and we were doing it a little bit over Zoom. I thought to myself, what if I've never reflected and given myself the space to do that. I think like a lot of entrepreneurs go of different projects and companies, and I kind of wanted to take stock. It was a taking stock of who I am, and it was only as I began that reflection that I realized how much my relationship with my father both meant to me and defined me. I think I recognized that a lot of my years were spent living up to some ideal, some whatever it is. And I think this is maybe a universal thing, but we have this, okay, that's my benchmark. That's what I want to be, and I'm going for it. And I was reconciling who I was in relation to my father's legacy. And we can talk about my dad a little bit, but he was a great man. And so I certainly looked up to him. And then also processing the trauma that I had been through, grief, divorce, Katrina, all of these things that kind of were like unprocessed as well. And so COVID just brought it all out. And I was fortunate to have this period to reflect and put it into a book.
I love analog, the visuals that come to mind. I carry around a backpack. I put a lot of stuff in my backpack, and it feels like these things you're saying, like these traumas, especially for guys, we just toss it in the backpack and you just carry it and you don't really deal with it. And in the COVID era, it got so, there's so much stillness. You can't really hide from yourself forever. And it's like you just dump the backpack out and all the items are now in front of you. And so what do I do with this? What do you do with it? Yeah, let's talk about your dad, because he's a great, what I had never met him, but it sounds like a pretty phenomenal person. And you definitely lived, I mean, what little boy is not going to be in the shadow of his father, especially a father who was a healer, someone who helped change communities forever. And you were born in one of these communities.
I was born in Nigeria. My parents were in the Peace Corps. Later moved to Nairobi, Kenya. My dad ran a relief organization, and we were there for 5 years. So I grew up going to villages in Africa, the kind of images that we would have seen on TV in the 80s, starving kids in Africa. I was there with them. And when we would arrive at these villages, my dad would be welcomed like a hero. His organization would bring food and water and healthcare and clinics and schools and do all of this good work. And then that's what he did his whole life. And he rose through the ranks of this organization until he was the CEO of a major nonprofit, worldwide nonprofit, and would travel all over the world doing good work. And in terms of a role model, you're like, okay, that brings up the question that I faced. How do I live up to that? How do I live up to what Dad did? That's amazing.
That's a powerful energy, and it's great. It's going to give you this motivation, but it's a strong presence. And it's a blessing. It can be a little bit of a burden, maybe, if that's fair to say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a blessing and a burden, and many things in our world have a strength and a shadow, or two sides of the coin. But the amazing thing was getting to bear witness to that and be a part of it. And what a gift to grow up that way. The burden would be as I reached adulthood and got off the path of what I should be doing and started to carve my own path in the world. I quickly was drawn to entrepreneurship because of the agency it provided, not wanting to just show up at a job every day, but wanting to do my own thing, blaze my own trail. But I had this hollowness. Something about my life was not being fulfilled because I was running a company that planned bachelor parties. Like Action Down on Broadway here in Nashville, we brought bachelor and bachelorette parties to Las Vegas. And boy, it was fun. I had a great time. And it was fun running my own business. And it was like one of those, you see the opportunity, let's solve a problem for people, try to make money doing it. But there definitely was an element of, am I doing something good for the world? Am I lifting people up? Is it feeding my soul? And I was searching for that. And during this reflection, I realized what I had done on my path. And there's things that I'd done between those two times, but what I'd done on my path, and realized, okay, you have done some good stuff. You have helped people.
But you got to start somewhere. You start with what you're young, you're like having a good time, find an opportunity, and there's some ups and downs. And some of the highlights from there is you're about to run out of money. You're like in a club, meet with a deal maker, loan shark is in the picture. I mean, you find a way out, but there's some dicey moments, but you take away from that, oh, wow, entrepreneurship, this is pretty neat. And I think you did a really neat project with golf courses. Like you would get to travel, is that right?
Yeah, my first job was working for Rainbird, and I would travel around the country fixing golf courses. And this was in the 90s when the big problem with the sprinkler system, these are $1 million sprinkler systems, and I would show up and it was like the computer needed to be rebooted.
Like the
Just
tech support. How do you restart the computer?
software patch. And I would be the hero because I showed up and I was young enough and nerdy enough that I knew how to do a little bit of computer fixing. But that really gave me my wings. That showed me the country. It was a great experience. Plus, that's my heretofore so far, probably forever, only kind of experience within a company, which actually I highly recommend. I think entrepreneurs, it's one thing to try to get right into that, but it's good to work for a company and understand what it's like and understand what culture is like, whether you like it or not. So that's my only work experience.
I like it. One of the things you just said, you got to feel that idea of travel. You got a little bit of freedom. You're working for someone else, but you have this feeling
Expense
of freedom.
account.
And there's a big theme in this book, the focus on freedom, not money. And so I want to ask, success is a funny word in America of how we think about what success is. And I think some of this has been you wrestling with what is success as you've been taking inventory on this, thinking about success from what your dad did. And there's even a part, he shows up and they've made t-shirts with his face on it.
Right.
So you have that imagery. You start with your first business, the Bachelor blowout business, right?
Let's go. Yeah.
Throwback to that. You got some work experience, but then at some point you make your way into, I want to be in this entrepreneurial space. You like the freedom, design your own path, and you find your way to New Orleans because this is really the birthing ground for creating a shop, basically, to begin stretching these muscles, learning these muscles, the successes, the failures. You start just getting that traction. And so I think that might be interesting to look at landing in New Orleans, the impact from the trauma of Katrina, a lot of people overlooking that community. So how does that, a younger Chris, how is this becoming to take shape? And then a little bit later, I want to talk about success because you do have success in a lot of ways. But I want to look at that whole theme. But first, New Orleans, you land here.
Yeah.
What brought you to that? And take us there.
Was living in LA and went to Jazz Fest, was invited to Jazz Fest and just fell in love with the city. I said, how can there be a city with this much music in the air and great spirits and great food and everybody having fun? And I just fell in love. Within 6 months, I had moved to New Orleans and I explained to my friends that I was searching for authenticity. I was in LA where everybody goes to a nightclub or a bar and looks around to see who's there. And then New Orleans where everybody's just like being themselves and having fun and really being their authentic selves. And I had Bachelor Blowout, my tech company at the time, startup, and it felt like a ghost land. This was in the early 2000s. 2001 was when I moved there. There were no entrepreneurial support centers. There's no startup funds. There's no mentorship. There's no incubators, accelerator programs. There's nothing. And I rented an office and went into this office and closed the door and worked on my company every day. And there was no community, that sense of community. And just prior to Katrina, that was forming. I was reaching out and trying to meet other people working on stuff. And then bam, Katrina hit. And the entire city was deeply impacted. Most people evacuated. Those who couldn't were in the Superdome. We were fortunate. We evacuated the night before and eventually made our way to our family home in North Carolina. And then watching on TV, watching on CNN and thinking, somebody's got to do something. Those poor people in the Superdome. What's happening?
Days are going by.
Literally days, 3, 4. When Kanye West said, George Bush doesn't care about black people, that was the sentiment. What are you doing? And I think this was actually one of the first moments that, as a country, we saw the government just in complete disarray. And unfortunately, it's a sign of how far we've come when you're like, yeah, I don't expect that much of the government at this point. But back then we did. I was gone for 6 weeks. I tried to go back as quickly as I could. One of my first memories once I got back was going to see the lower Ninth Ward with a friend of mine, walking through where he grew up and seeing houses in the streets and utter destruction. But over a period of time, we had a friend living with us who lost his home. And once it took a little while, it was a couple of years actually, but the community started, okay, we're back. The city went from about 500,000 people to 250,000 people. So half the size of a major city. The people who were back, if we want to live here, we got to lead. And it was just this amazing moment of, I always say that the baton of leadership is not passed, it's taken. The next leadership, the next generation steps up and just says, I'm sick of what's happening now. I'm going to move into my position, take charge here. And I did that, and others did that. And there was this huge community movement around entrepreneurship. And this happened to coincide with the broadening of the interest in startups from Silicon Valley to, hey, can we do this in our city? And I decided to launch Launchpad, a co-working space. I went to San Francisco and New York and visited co-working spaces. This was before WeWork was founded. We opened Launchpad. There weren't that many back then, amazingly. And it was one of the first things in my life that just really started to click and started to work. And I was completely fueled to help support all these people who wanted to be entrepreneurs. There were no jobs. There's no corporate jobs. There's no major Fortune 500 companies. If you wanted to live in New Orleans, you had to create your own way. And so we all of a sudden had all these amazing, smart, driven people working under one roof. And then I just was like starting to, okay, what barriers are people facing? Mentorship. Let's bring in some mentors from Silicon Valley or from somebody who's done this before locally. Capital. Okay, let's try to do angel investment pitch events and all these things that the EC does and we've seen happen in markets across the country. And it's wonderful, but that was the beginning of all of this. Launchpad starts in 2009.
Okay, so that is super early with the co-working space. You mentioned the EC. They got the building here, Nashville Entrepreneur Center. That was started in 2010, right after the Nashville flood. They were down on Broadway, and then they moved in this. They were the first building in to help restore it. Anyway, right. 2009, very early. Okay, members are coming in. You're bringing the vibrancy back. You're bringing hope. You're bringing some hope to this community. And you talk about some silly things you did. We all have this in our life. We look back like, oh, why did I do that? You're doing the best you can with what you got, making the best decisions you can with the information you have. But there's some things you do. Sometimes I think you talk, oh, maybe I started too many businesses or I would jump in too fast. But that you took what was maybe seen as like a fault and you shifted that. All right, I know I love to start things. Let me help some other people have a framework to get started and to support them as they're starting. We're a startup helping startups.
Yeah, and one of the things I try to do throughout the book is there's a lot of entrepreneurship and business books that are like, this is how you do it. And I actually don't have a roadmap for how you do it. What I do know is mistakes I've made, failures I've had, and lessons I've learned from that. And so this book, I pull, as somebody who has started more than 30 businesses, way more than you should. I've got a lot of material to pull from, and I try to share those lessons so that other people won't make them. A lot of the messages in here are things that I've tried that I wouldn't recommend.
And so the authenticity in that, I appreciate it. Okay, so that is going along. We talked about success a few minutes ago. So you talked, there's some failures, some things you might have done differently, but success, and I am also curious as you've grown and matured and just had more life experiences, how if you look at success differently now than then. But there was a white whale. Every investor dreams of writing the first check in to a business as an investor that no one else is believing in. And then that becoming a unicorn, right? Over $1 billion valuation. And I think it's sold for
$1.1
billion.
Yeah.
So it sells for over $1 billion. That is, man, you did it.
And that's a unique experience. I'm very fortunate to have been a part of that. We had a company, Launchpad. There was an entrepreneur named Patrick Comer that just had a co-working desk. I got to know him at Launchpad. One of the stories was he had an intern. The first person he hired would come in all summer. He would make his intern bring his tower desktop computer in. This guy would lug in the computer every day. How's this guy going anywhere? But during that period, I was really interested in supporting startups. And the thing that was lacking in New Orleans was any kind of capital at all. There was no funds, no angels. There was just nothing. And we went and pitched some people that had wealth. This was a time when I would describe it as New Orleans was more focused on, there were people with generational wealth, more interested in wealth preservation. They didn't have the startup bug. So we pitched in New Orleans, went up to New York, Boston, pitched, came back, and I thought it was over. I'm not going to be able to make this happen for you. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, Patrick put his hand on my shoulder and said, Chris, I don't want them to invest. I want you to invest. And it was like a light bulb clicked. And it was like a leapfrog moment in my career where I just said, yeah, I can do that. I had a job. I have a retirement account, a little bit of money. I shouldn't be doing this. My mom would advise against doing it. But yeah, I'm going to write a check for $25,000. I took a board seat. I helped catalyze the rest of the round. There was an investor in New Orleans that put in significantly more money, but did it because I was willing to do it. And what a ride. This was every board meeting, every quarter, hitting numbers, going from $1 million, $10 million to over $100 million in revenue, hiring, just these beautiful startup, amazing stories. Hundreds of people being hired in New Orleans, creating hundreds of jobs, ultimately going on to sell, I guess it was 2021, is that right? For $1.1 billion. And so, yeah, major win for me. Yeah.
It's
That's what you dream
remarkable.
of.
It's what everybody dreams of.
Yeah.
That's the dream. And I want to ask you, as you've reflected on this for several years now, when you think of success, would it still be a success if that did not happen, that white whale? Because so many angels, I mean, you have to, and it's usually they invest in a lot of companies expecting maybe nothing will happen. So, like, how do you integrate that experience?
It's absolutely true that I've had success, and so it's hard for me to imagine exactly what I would feel like if I didn't. But I do remember what I felt like before. And I felt like having that win, that sale, was very validating. Almost more like validation of the effort and the commitment and my belief in it than the money. And the money obviously is life-changing, supports our retirement. Integrating that success gave me the privilege of writing this book. It's taken 5 years while we're doing other work, and a true period of reflection. Because I think even just a period of reflection is, people would say, that's at the very top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you can get to that, you've got a lot of needs met, and I do, and a gift. The importance of a period of reflection, what I would say is that doesn't require, anybody can do that and find their way to that. And I would really encourage that. People have asked, as I'm starting to talk about the book, was it hard to write a book? Like, what was it like? And my response, I can sense like they're mentioning, oh, could I write a book? Or what would it be like to write a book? And what I encourage is, you don't have to write a book to reflect, but a taking stock of your life, particularly if there's a milestone. I was approaching 50. That's a career, like how much I had a baby, a newborn baby. How do I want to live now that I have a daughter? The taking stock at this milestone, whatever prompts the milestone, I think is a critical thing. And you may change your life. It's changed how I live my life. Absolutely.
I like that take. Analog, it's a fun name for someone who has been in business doing tech startups.
Yeah.
And living within the rise of technology, understanding it, from that young boy helping reboot servers, computers at the golf courses across the country, to the startups you were coaching and doing with. So it is interesting to think about analog. There is some lessons in this, maybe some stillness, maybe some ways to integrate a lot of this. So I am just curious, from the tech entrepreneur and being a dad and being thoughtful about the next generation, thinking about how fast technology is changing now, especially AI. Everyone's talking about AI. So, like, how are you grappling with this?
Yeah. I like the word analog. I like the feeling of analog things. And I think what I realized was I'm drawn to that because I have had a career in technology. Our lives are consumed with technology these days. We're constantly on our phone. And one of the reflections that I had as I went through a period of, let's call it depression, anxiety, like extreme anxiety, depression. My business was, Launchpad was crashing and burning. We had a particular location that was really struggling. And I realized I would escape and I would scroll on my phone. I would look at Instagram, and it never made me feel better. All it did was show me other people that purportedly were happier than me. And it was kind of like an aha. It's okay, wait, why? First thing when you wake up in the morning and your brain's coming alive, why do I reach for the phone on my bedside table and start scrolling? Because afterwards I never feel better. I feel worse about myself, about my life. And so I began to explore meditation. I didn't know anything about meditation. I found an app called 10% Happier, and I thought that sounds good. I'd like to be 10% happier. Began meditating that way, and slowly began to realize how much technology had infiltrated. I remember when Steve Jobs was introducing the iPhone, and he's like, all of these things are now in your phone, your music, your TV, your computer, your phone, your text, your messaging, your email, all these things. And I actually began a journey to deconstruct that, taking analog pictures, like you're taking film pictures here with a Polaroid camera, listening to music on vinyl. I realized, oh, those sound so great. And I'm sitting on the couch, letting this warm sound wash over me. I think those explorations have certainly made me realize how it's important to bring our relationship with technology into alignment for ourselves. And I'm going to give you an analogy with that. The same way that you need to bring your relationship with another addictive substance like alcohol into alignment. Some people find I shouldn't drink and they go sober. That's fine. Some people drink way too much. You need to bring it into alignment and realizing that these things can be insidious and they can be addictive. But alcohol and cigarettes are no different. There's corporate interests that want you to spend your time. They're making money while you're scrolling.
Yeah.
And so I think that being deliberate, being intentional, controlling our relationship with technology as we go forward and we enter the world of AI. And by the way, do not abstain. I do not abstain from technology. I love technology. I love AI, ChatGPT. I use it all the time. If you can harness my mantra about my phone is this tool is for creating, not consuming. And I remind myself of that. If I'm taking pictures, if I'm creating a podcast, if I'm using an app to work out, all those things are making my life better and I'm harnessing technology. But if I'm just there scrolling, if I'm just there consuming somebody else, I'm the product and somebody is selling me to advertisers. So I think that's the critical thing to really open our eyes around with technology going forward.
It's a good reminder. If it's free, you are the product. And it's unbelievable how much it's changed. You're right about you're the last generation to really know what it's like growing up without it. I'm a millennial, so I have some memory of it being, at least in high school. Like Facebook came out, and I was in high school. And now, I can't imagine. Now, 12 years after I go to college, seeing the students I teach, how much they have to combat, I call it the pocket casino. And that really resonates with the students. Like, yeah, that's what it is. And it really grips you. It can really grip you. And just that quote, software is eating the world. You referenced this. Really, from your take, it's focus on what machines can't replicate. So that is an encouragement. When we think about what's coming up next in the upcoming years, there's the compounding of technology. We see this with the chip manufacturing. We see this with AI. I saw a funny meme the other day. It's saying college grads are using ChatGPT to write their resumes, and recruiters are using AI to read the resumes, and it's like no one's getting hired. And so there's a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of the unknown. We're afraid. We fear the things we don't understand. We fear the unknown. So do you have an encouragement when you think about the future generation? Anything else you want to touch on as it relates to AI and the unknown with how fast it's changing, and then referencing analog as a path to maybe not completely
Give
lose
your life
yourself?
over. I think that one of the things that I say is that the march of technology is inexorable. From the time of the fire to the wheel till now, man has wanted to move technology, humankind has wanted to move technology forward. So I don't think we can make it stop as much as some of us might be ready to. I think that it is really important to maintain our relationship with it, know that it's in integrity, we're using it in a healthy way, we're using it to help us. I think that understanding professionally and from a career perspective, are you operating above or below the API? Are there computers that are telling you what to do, like Uber drivers? Or are you adding intelligence above that computer layer? Because that's a critical distinction, and you want to be above it to the extent you can. I think that human creativity is our way out of this. I think that as good as AI is, we've all used ChatGPT, we've all used generative AI. Handmade stuff is better. People who write from the heart. I wrote this book, most of the book before it really was AI. It's amazing how 5 years, how fast stuff goes by. But use AI for a rough draft. Use it to help you outline. Use it to help you harness your thoughts, but then write it. Same thing with creative work. We, through Cosmico, do a lot of concert posters and promotion, art, music. The creative fields, I think, are still the domain of humans and will remain. And to your last point, I think that we are entering a period where returning to a natural world and ancient traditions. I think about things that have been around for thousands of years, whether that's spiritual beliefs or rhythms of our earth, how we're fueled by being out in nature. All of those things are the right direction to chase as technology becomes more and more consuming in our lives. Those things will be healing for people. Those will be healing for us.
Yes, as we're starting to wrap up, healing energies. There's a lot more that we just don't see with our human eyes that's all around us. And you talk a little about this, your path, shamanism. There's some of this in here, which is fun that it's New Orleans as part of your fabric. I don't know. It just seemed to me that was an interesting. I don't know if there is a connection with New Orleans and that, but
Yeah.
that's part of the book and finding. When I was reading that, it feels like we can't only use technology. If we're in a dark place, we can get in the doom scroll. That's how they make the money. You are the product. So maybe it's not technology to get you out of that. It is nature, where it's maybe alternative methods, and just to connect with the roots of being a human.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I thought there's that aspect. I think you crafted your intuition, which is a skill. I think men are not as gifted. I generally think women have a natural intuition. I think everybody has a masculine and feminine energy, I believe. And so you have found, and I think you have integrated. You took this warrior energy, doubled down. You're just going after it. You find the white whale. But then at one point in your life, after your a divorce, you're on the motorcycle going through Texas, probably some wounded feminine energy, maybe some challenging stuff.
Yeah.
And then you find some healing. You meet Anne, which is like the exclamation point, I feel like. And behind every great man is like an even better woman.
Absolutely.
And so I want to have a moment for Anne. That's part of your dedication as well, among others in the book. But yeah, you're, basically what I'm trying to get to is you're finding ways for healing. You meet a wonderful person, a wonderful partner in Anne. So what are some of the reflections you have with that? And then we'll begin wrapping up with Harper.
Okay. All right. When I met Ann in the Driscoll Hotel in Austin, Texas during South by Southwest, it was one of those love at first sight moments. My heart leapt and something in me was ignited. The path that I've been on since we came together and got married feels like the fullest expression of me. I think one of the amazing things about Ann is her intuition, her energy. She connects with people. She understands people. She sees people. And she did that for me. What a privilege to be married to her. One of the things that I was lacking, and she really complimented, as we touched on earlier, starting all these businesses. I was one of those throw spaghetti at the wall, bat balls, but I don't know, what am I really doing? And Anne really focused my energy and is incredibly strategic and helped me both in my career, in my personal development, and importantly in this book. Anne and I wrote this book together. I went through several iterations of writing and rewriting, and really the process that brought it to fruition was I finally had it in different chapters, and we would read the chapter together and both read it, mark it up, and then we would go for these hikes and these long walks where we would talk about it, and she would challenge me. Then I would go back to work and reshape it and hone it. We went through many iterations of that. A lot of these ideas are ours, not just mine. The story is mine with her intersecting into it. And that probably leads us to Harper, our greatest intersection.
Yes. Was Anne before the Unicorn Lucid? Did you all meet, right?
We did not meet before it. I had already invested and I was on
Yeah.
the board of Lucid.
Got it.
But she certainly supported me there and was a part of that ride.
God, I'm trying to think of my timelines.
Yeah.
But you're right. The most important timeline is Harper. And for a while, you and Anne child-free for many years, and you kind of made the best of that. Do you want to speak to the child-free years of just, I don't know, what that meant to you, and then the launch of the greatest startup?
Sure. Back to the idea of taking stock and reflecting. When we first got married, we tried to have children. We didn't. And we thought, okay, we had some disappointment, but okay, what are our lives going to be like child-free? That can be pretty fun. A lot of freedom. We were traveling the world, doing all sorts of things. Boom, get pregnant. Harper comes along, and that changes everything. And of course, for me at this point, like changes everything for the better. What a wonderful person to bring into our lives. And one of the things that I did in writing this book, I wrote it for a lot of people, for myself to take stock. I wanted to tell my dad how much I loved him and how much his journey has informed my journey. I wanted to thank Anne for everything she's done in our lives. But I also wanted to write this down for Harper. This is what I believe in life up till now. And heaven forbid, you don't get to the age where I'm able to deliver that to you in adulthood. You'll have this to read. And the future is unknown. I'm an optimist, and I believe in that there's been challenging times in the past, and there's challenging times now, and we'll get through it. But we absolutely think about what kind of world Harper's growing up in, and whether it's technology or government or climate or all these challenges that her generation is going to face. But hopefully there's some tools in there that would be the way her dad thinks about life.
Yes, and her dad being, you were a young man. This is a book that it's a good guide for the young person. So she's probably, 7 maybe now? Is that right? How old is she now?
Yeah, she's about to turn 7. That's
All right,
right.
so turning 7 now, about 11 years or so, she's 18. Is there, if you were to leave her a voicemail, like whether it's a theme from the book, because part of this is like what you would have liked to have known, because at some point, the world can take the light out of you.
Yeah.
And then you talk about, hey, when I turned 40, I think someone says now you don't have to care about what other people think about you. So you have this light, especially like a young woman. A young person has the light.
Yeah.
And you talk about that too, the things that bring her joy. And at some point, the world just starts to it's challenging. And then you can find the light again later on. Maybe you find that integration. You're working through all these energies. As she's going into that 18, 11 years from now, like, what is there a message you want to end this with?
Wow, that's a wonderful sentiment, Harper. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I believe in you. I think that I want you to believe in yourself. I think that that fuel, that energy, whatever you're striving for, wherever you're going, whatever you're exploring, just go for it. Follow those dreams. Don't let yourself get boxed in by life, by people telling you the way things should go, whether it's me, your parents telling you the way things should go or what you should be doing. That self-direction, having that agency in your life is so critical. I describe the feeling of what has led to anxiety, some depression, or times when I haven't felt like I've had my hands on the wheel of my life. I'm not driving the car. Stuff's happening to me. I'm not in control. And I think so if you're grasping for anything, try to control what you can to put your hands on the wheel and have agency in your life. And that is a path to happiness and joy.
It resonates. I really appreciate you sharing your time. And it's so neat that we've got to know each other. It's so cool to see what this is all about, and I learned a lot from it. It resonates with me. So congratulations, and I know Harper having a dad like you and a mom like Ann, hey, she's always going to access these building blocks. And
Yeah.
you've got to incorporate some analog stuff in our lives. So
Absolutely.
before you leave, we're going to make sure I have a little film camera. We'll get a film. We got to get a picture on film together, and I know I'll put it on the wall. But Chris, congrats. Thanks so much. And I know this is not a goodbye. It's just a see you later.
It's a see you later. Thank you so much, Clark. It's so nice to be back with you. I really appreciate this is my first opportunity to talk about analog, to talk about my book, and I really appreciate being able to do it with you. That was very special.